There he goes.
All right, Tom Brokaw does the news in a bee suit.
Former President Gerald Ford died today.
I want to apologize to Gerald Ford's family. Chef Sean Pharr and I fell under the tutelage of Gene Wuller, co-owner and general bee savant of Gentle Breeze Honey. In the spring, they buy about 650 queens shipped in from sunny Florida.
And they're all in their own little cages. And then we take them, we put them in holding colonies here to keep them. And then we put the rest in smaller colonies, they're called nukes. And we let the queens free so they can start laying. And then we can take that nucleus of bees and put it into a colony and start a new colony.
Lifespans are short in the bee world, with queens being replaced every 2 years. The worker bees only live for around 32 days, which includes around 500 miles of flight. They literally work themselves to death. Being a pollinator is intense.
Come on, let me pick you up. This is a young bee, she just emerged.
Here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a mite count, because a varroa mite is probably one of the beekeepers' biggest management problems today.
The varroa mite acts like a vampire, sucking fluid not only from the adult bees, but the brood or developing eggs, often transmitting disease. In the summer of 2018, around half of Wisconsin bee colonies had varroa mites.
These varroa mites came over into the United States in the 80s, and we've been fighting them ever since then. So what we have in here is just plain powdered sugar, just like when you use in your house. And we try to get about a half a cup of bees in here. You can kind of see where the bees kind of get all coated with that powdered
Getting them ready
sugar.
for candying.
Yeah.
Once again, shaking this,
Shaking
coating it in powdered sugar, you're shaking it around.
Yep.
How is that going to show you?
So what it does is powdered sugar gets in the mite's breathing tubes and on its legs, and it releases it from the bee, if there's any in here.
And what does the mite look like?
The mite looks kind of like a wood tick. If we find a varroa mite, sometimes you'll see them, and they'll be underneath the bee right here.
Yeah.
And they're feeding on it, and they're feeding on what they call the fat bodies of the bee. If you had a mite on, you'd be about the size of a dinner plate attached to you.
Okay.
Let's see, one more shake here, we'll see what we got. We're coming up with nothing. There's nothing in here, so just the powdered sugar came through. They're on a very good varroa mite controlled treatment here.
So are these bees all pretty pissed off now?
Yes, see? You had to say that, see, and then they stung me. They are agitated a little bit.
When they pick up their tail and fanning, they're giving off warning sign. Hey, there's something in our hive that shouldn't be in here.
It seems like the entire lifespan and goal of the bee is to protect and help its own kind. Like it lives and dies to protect its colony.
There are a lot of challenges a beekeeper faces when trying to manage hives. Pesticides, fungicides, the varroa and forage area loss can all have devastating consequences in managing these complex colonies. As the land in Wisconsin continues to turn into row crop grains like corn and soy, the pollen-producing plants that honeybees need, like alfalfa and clover, are disappearing.
So as a beekeeper, we have to manage these challenges that come along.
Tim, Gene's son and a co-owner of Gentle Breeze, was kind enough to let us help him prep some frames for honey extraction.
So then we'd be able to pull the super off,
Okay.
get it on the truck and then go from there. You can put out an empty super and in a day and a half or 2 days, it could be filled back up with when that flow is really going. And then we could do a real quick check. Where you're just making sure, so they're good to go.
Inside, Gene and Tim are getting ready to use their brand new extractor. Not some sort of medieval torture device. An extractor in the bee world is used to remove honey from the combs.
Where the combs spin to get the honey out, on the old one it was about 21 minutes. We'd have it set. This one does it in 6. So it's all brand new. This, by the way, is the first time I've seen this thing work.
Me too.
One bee produces 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in their lifetime.
Did you start out by scraping everything by hand?
Nope, we had high-tech thing with an electric knife. You slice the wax off, just like this machine's going to do. We did 2 frames at a time with a crank. Honeybees are like cows.
Like with cows, there's a lot of breed diversity in the bee world. Breakfast, Italiano, Russian. I think their accents might be better than mine, though.
See, the United States never had honeybees here. They were brought in with the settlers.
Interesting.
So that's why they call it white man's fly. You know.
Fill up the tank. And that's just the output pedal.
Are you holding it down until it's full?
Nope, just touch it once with your
Touch it once.
Yep, and that'll activate it.
Like most smaller family farms, the Wohlers rely on extended family or show hosts and chefs to help out with certain tasks like bottling.
All right, we need kale and we need ricotta. I think this will be big enough.
I hope so.
You want to carry it?
I'll carry it.
You're the basket man? All right. I understand that it's hard to source locally. Well, how do you do it?
When I moved back to Madison and was anticipating opening Mint Mark, I went to the market to meet as many farmers and local producers as I could, and just relied on all the people that I learned about local product from as a cook 15 years ago.
Excellent.
Ricotta.
Oh, look at that. There we go.
All right, so maple syrup,
What are we going with?
straight out of Wisconsin, right?
Yeah. 101 miles, Cashin, Wisconsin.
Let's do it.
Good deal.
Today we are at the home of George Reistad, Food Policy Director for the City of Madison.
Chef, you got a plan here?
Yeah, I think what we're gonna do today, if we were to just to have honey be the absolute main feature, which I wish it could, I think we'd all be walking around on some kind of sugar buzz and just do a ton of baklava and some, sticky buns and that sort of thing. So what we're gonna do is try and incorporate it into a bit of a savory situation. Honey and chicken always go well together. We're gonna do some roasted chicken thighs, and then we're gonna glaze them with a little bit of chili flake and garlic. It gets kind of caramelized in the honey itself. Since it's a sugar, you can go crazy hot with it and almost fry those elements. Cake's done. No. And then, so we'll just drizzle that over the top, and at the end for dessert, we're gonna butter roast some apples and serve them over some ricotta and honey as well.
It sounds good to me.
Yeah, it sounds really
I'm
good.
on board.
Chef Sean's restaurant, Mint Mark, has a menu that is produce-driven in the summer and sources vegetables locally as much as possible.
We change the menu every day. We make about 6 to 7 changes a week, actually mostly entire items. But I think that's the way that I found to really stay true to local and seasonal is to be able to move with it. There's not 4 seasons. I mean, there's not even 12 seasons if you go month by month. There's seasonality that happens for a week.
The products that you're purchasing are going to cost more, especially in a season like this. They're going to have lower yields when the weather's weird and that kind of thing. The farmer that made this isn't in some perfect patch of land out in California or Mexico for just growing something all the time. They have the land they have, and they can grow what they can grow depending on the weather and all of that kind of stuff.
Correct. And I am buying local tomatoes. I mean, they aren't cheap. They're not Cisco cheap, but they are delicious, and they stand on their own. And a lot of the dishes that we highlight them in, I don't do much to them. My motto is I try not to screw up what the farmer did.
It's difficult, right? It's a lot of work to essentially buy local because there's not just one place you can go like Cisco or Reinhardt or whatever. And so what we're looking at is trying to figure out, is there a market for a facility that potentially could make that easier for retailers, restaurants, things like that. So it's interesting, man.
Nice. Excuse me, I asked for the large tongs.
If you pull that red thing out,
Do you have anything bigger?
I think if you pull that whole red bucket out,
Just
there
in case it starts on fire. Use the long tong.
There's this guy right here.
I also need a plaid stag spatula. Ah, sweet.
Yeah, there you go. just what you ordered, man. It matches the stag, man.
It does, the plaid stag bull.
Oh, the plaid stag.
Yes.
Welcome to the plaid stag.
Welcome to the plaid stag.
I love that bowl. It's my favorite bowl.
Smoking or non-smoking tonight.
I'm glad you picked that bowl, man. Thank you.
I'm glad you have this bowl.
Year round.
Year round.
This is literally, it is my favorite bowl.
Chris Jingle is.
Dude loves this bowl.
Did I mention?
Oh, God.
I'm on Amazon now. I'll find it.
It's cool. Drop it or whatever. It's cool.
I hate to break it to you, brother, but your grandma re-gifted this to me.
I'm so okay with that.
Pan-seared chicken breast served with sweet potato mash over apples, onion, and sage, topped with a very special honey sauce, and served with a sparkling Cabernet Franc. This dish is a delightful contrast. Both savory and sweet, crispness meets smooth with a honey sauce that enhances the meal rather than overpowering it.
Well, to the birds and the bees.
And to George hosting,
Hey,
chef.
thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So I had the greatest time out at your farm. Like,
Thank you.
obviously just a fond appreciation for you and your family and just what kind of people you are out there, like so kind, and the experience of seeing the care that goes into the product and the concern for how it tastes and the concern for the animals themselves, the bees. Like, it was the best. It was such a great time. So
There are challenges. Like, we could someday not have this.
Yep.
And I guess I'm curious, and I'd want to know more about what those challenges are.
Our honeybees in Wisconsin have been inflicted with what we call a mite, and we're winning the battle there. I truly think we are. You have to have people that are dedicated, like our son Tim. We got to keep these guys alive. And so what's it going to take? And yeah, it's an uphill battle, but boy, it's one that I'm almost positive we can win. You know, it's so good. So.
Well, I hope so.
Gene started his beekeeping when he was living literally maybe, I don't know, a mile or less from here. And he actually baled hay on this very land, which would have been full of alfalfa and clover. And Tim and I, his son, were married. He describes to me when Eugene was doing this as a hobbyist before it became his business, he would keep 100 hives as just a hobby, right? I mean, did you keep that many? He was working a full-time job.
Wow.
He didn't need a lot of sleep, but with far less effort than it is today, he could produce so much more honey per hive. I don't know if per hive, but just with so much less input.
You made an interesting point to say that, you know, this land that we're sitting on, which is now obviously developed, that you used to farm on it. And I think from that perspective, we have to realize that the human constraints and the population growth pressures that we put on a place go part and parcel with some of the issues that we're facing. And so the population of Dane County and the city of Madison will continue to grow because we have relatively stable climate and weather. We have fresh water. We, as it currently stands, are relatively affordable. And so we have all these population pressures, and the city is really, I think, thinking about ways to use the land that we have really been trying to do things that increase pollinator habitat and pollinator health. And then from a policy perspective, we've also looked at ways that we can, you know, have residents and empower residents to do certain things that, you know, stabilize and increase pollinator habitat. And so we have policies like the terrace treatment policy, which allows people to actually, instead of just turf grass on city right-of-way where, you know, between the street and your sidewalk, you can put in things like prairie or flowers. These are tools that we're essentially giving to the public to be able to do these things, but then it also serves nature as well.
Madison is an official Bee City USA affiliate, which means they commit to creating sustainable habitat for pollinators. This matters because honeybee numbers have been decreasing across the globe. China, for example, has had to resort to hand pollinating their crops.
That's not to put fear in everybody's minds, but
No,
tell you
we're all
what,
screwed.
we're all schnooked if the bees don't have it. We're out of luck.
So we got to be careful about that.
How does that all tie into food security?
These animals, creatures, insects were created to do that. I mean, this is part of what they do. They millions of years, right? They've evolved to this point to perfect this craft. And now you have humans doing it. I mean, the inefficiencies, the costs. There was a report, I think, done by the Food and Ag Organization of the United Nations that priced the actual contribution of pollinators between $300 and $600 billion a year. I mean,
Is that mostly in bee costumes?
I mean, think about that number, $300 to $600 billion a year, if you cost it out what pollinators are actually providing the food system. And so this idea of not having pollinators around is significant in terms of thinking about, how, we're a society of convenience, right? We're a planet of convenience, more or less. We want what we want when we want it. And so if you don't have pollinators, at least to the level that we have them now, you're going to find there's going to be a lot of changes in your diet, right? There's going to be a lot of changes in the options you're able to get at both the grocery store and the farmer's market. It's a real issue that I'm glad it's coming to light and we're taking it seriously, but we got to get real about this thing because it's a service we basically cannot replicate.
The need for honeybees, I think, can't be overemphasized, that we really do need them.
I do enjoy like very simple Italian things, and a lot of times they'll finish a meal with just ricotta and some kind of fruit, and especially a drizzle of honey. So these are apples that are cooked in a little bit of butter and your honey caramelized again, and then just a shot of lemon juice in there, a little bit of salt and thyme over some ricotta.
Can't wait.
It smells amazing.
It smells really good.
I love the sweet and salty together.
The wine fits just right.
This is a nice compliment.
Yeah.